It wasn't the bark. It was the silence that followed. Thick, heavy, like fog before a storm. A silence sharp enough to slice through instinct. Ethan Cole, CEO of a mid-sized tech company, had started his Wednesday morning like any other. Reheated coffee, a few emails on his phone, and the constant challenge of keeping his 2-year-old daughter from turning breakfast into chaos. But Max, a 95-pound German shepherd left to him by his father before he passed, stood completely still in the kitchen doorway. No bark, no growl, no movement. Just frozen, ears high, eyes locked, breath held as if the air itself was bracing for something unseen. Max wasn't the kind of dog to overreact. Ethan had grown up with him, from a 10-year-old boy on the porch beside his father, to now, a father himself watching Max lie beside his daughter's crib each night. He knew one thing for sure. Max only froze like that when something was very, very wrong. Lila, still in her booster seat, swung her feet and giggled with a plastic spoon in hand. Morning light spilled through the kitchen window, dancing off her messy golden curls. In front of her sat a half-eaten bowl of banana cinnamon oatmeal, her favorite. Across the table, Sadie Monroe, the nanny who had been with them for 6 months, leaned in with a familiar smile. She was always gentle, always on time, soft-voiced and sweet. This morning she wore her usual pale pink hoodie, holding the spoon toward Lila. "One more bite for the princess," she cooed. And then Max exploded, not with a growl, not with a bark, but a full-body lunge powered by something ancient and raw. Nails skidded across tile. Ethan didn't even get a word out before Max clamped down on Sadie's arm. The spoon clattered. Lila screamed. Sadie shrieked, stumbling back. Max held tight but didn't pull, didn't shake. He just held. "Max, let go!" Ethan snapped, voice hard as steel. Less CEO, more the echo of a soldier's son. Max let go instantly. Sadie crumpled to the floor, clutching her bleeding arm, and once again the kitchen fell into stillness, except for the pounding of Ethan's heart and the piercing wail of his daughter. Sadie collapsed hard to the floor, clutching her left arm as blood began to seep through the fabric of her pale pink hoodie. Her breathing came fast, eyes wide with shock and fear. "That dog is crazy! He went nuts!" she screamed. "I didn't do anything. I was just feeding her." Ethan said nothing. He scooped Lila out of the booster seat, cradling her trembling frame against his chest. She buried her face into his shirt, warm tears soaking through the fabric. He could feel her heartbeat against him, tiny, frantic. Max had retreated to the far corner of the kitchen, near the pantry. He didn't growl, didn't move. He just stood there, eyes locked on the same thing. The spoon on the floor. Ethan crouched. The white plastic spoon bore a faint pink smear. It wasn't banana, it wasn't cinnamon. It was a color that didn't belong in a toddler's breakfast. He raised it to his nose. There was a strange scent, faintly metallic, cold. A distant wail of sirens echoed up the street. Someone had called 911. Maybe a neighbor, maybe someone who'd heard the screams. Sadie was still trembling, eyes brimming. I swear, I don't know what's happening." Ethan didn't answer. He just held Lila tighter, his gaze fixed on the spoon. 20 minutes later, his living room had become a controlled chaos. A paramedic wrapped Sadie's arm in gauze while another tried to soothe Lila, though she wouldn't calm unless she was in Ethan's arms. 2 police officers stood by the door, one of them an old acquaintance from college. "They're going to have to take Max for a behavioral hold," the officer said, calm but firm. "You know the procedure, Ethan." "He's not a stray," Ethan replied, steady. "He's family. He was my father's gift before he passed." "I know, but he bit a civilian. We don't have a choice." Max stood still by the fireplace. He didn't resist when Ethan clipped the leash to his collar. No growl, no hesitation. But before stepping outside, Max turned his head, just once, toward the kitchen table, toward the spoon. A chill crawled up Ethan's spine. As the animal control van pulled away, Max inside, Ethan stood at the doorway, Lila in his arms, a knot forming deep in his gut. Something wasn't right. Max had never bitten anyone. Not now. Not after all these years. Not unless there was a reason. 2 hours later, with Lila finally asleep from exhaustion and Max locked away in a sterile kennel at the Animal Control Center, Ethan sat parked outside a small brick building with frosted windows and no sign. Earlier, Sadie had refused a ride to the hospital. She insisted she'd manage with just a few stitches and would visit urgent care on her own. Her arm was wrapped in gauze, her expression a strange mix of pain and resentment. As she stepped out the door, she paused and turned to Ethan. I think I'll take a few days off, until things are clearer," she said, voice wavering. Ethan only nodded, holding a sobbing Lila in his arms. Now he was here to see the one person he could trust, Dr. Vanessa Clark, a toxicologist who had worked closely with his late father during military research. Clark knew emergencies, she understood systems, and most importantly, she knew how to stay off the radar. When Clark opened the door, she didn't ask questions. Her eyes locked on the Ziploc bag in Ethan's hand. Inside, a small sample of oatmeal from Lila's bowl, carefully scooped with a clean spoon and wrapped in paper towel. "How old's the kid?" she asked. "2. Took a few bites before Max reacted," Ethan replied. Clark nodded and disappeared into the back lab without another word. Ethan didn't wait. He needed to be near Lila. The guilt gnawed at him, not toward Sadie, but toward himself. Max had seen something. Ethan hadn't. Back home, Lila slept peacefully in her crib, hugging a ragged stuffed bear. Ethan sat outside her door, heart tangled in knots. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He picked up immediately. "This is Ethan." Clark's voice was low and sure. "I ran a GCMS scan," she said. "There are trace amounts of ethylene glycol in the oatmeal." Ethan froze. "Antifreeze?" "Yes, small dose, but a toxin nonetheless. It wouldn't kill instantly, but repeated exposure, especially in a child, could cause severe kidney damage." He couldn't speak. "The sample was still warm when you brought it in. The signature suggests it was introduced within an hour of collection." Ethan shut his eyes. Max hadn't snapped. He hadn't lost control. He had stopped a poisoning and saved Lila's life. "Can you write up a formal report?" he asked. "I will, but if this goes to court, you'll need more. A motive. And proof someone intended to do this." "I'll find it," Ethan said. When he hung up, the silence in the house was deafening. He looked down the hall, where Max used to lie each night. Now it was empty, and for the first time, Ethan felt a chill, not because Max had bitten someone, but because he had almost doubted the dog who never failed him. That night, once Lila had finally drifted off again, Ethan sat alone in the living room, with his laptop on his knees and a weight pressing on his chest like stone. He couldn't sit still. Not after the toxicology report. Not after the way Max had stared at the dining table, like something was still left behind. He opened the home security footage, the hallway cam facing the front door. He'd installed it months ago to monitor package deliveries. It didn't point directly into the kitchen, but caught just enough of the dining area, specifically the corner where Sadie prepped breakfast. He scrubbed back to that morning's feed. The image was a bit grainy, but clear enough. 7:36 a.m. Sadie entered the frame from the front door. Pink hoodie, hair tied up, bag slung over her shoulder. 7:38, a quick sequence. She set her bag on a dining chair, pulled out her phone, and then a small, unlabeled vial. She held it low, opened it, and stirred something into Lila's oatmeal. No label, no hesitation. Ethan froze the frame, zoomed in. It was fuzzy, but visible. Her hand was on the table, vial in one palm, spoon in the other. He snapped a screenshot. saved it. It wasn't perfect proof, but it was enough to raise serious suspicion. The next morning, Ethan walked into the police station with a USB in hand and sat across from Detective Jordan Rains. Sharp-eyed, calm, once a friend from college. Now one of the most respected investigators in the county. "This is the video," Ethan said, "and this is the toxicology report. The oatmeal tested positive for ethylene glycol." Rains blinked slowly. "You're certain?" "I don't know the motive, but I know Max saw something and reacted." She nodded, brows furrowing. "You realize how serious this is, right? Poisoning a child. That's not domestic. That's federal territory." "I'm not accusing yet," Ethan replied quietly. "I'm reporting suspicious behavior. My daughter comes first." Rains leaned back, thoughtful. "Let me bring this to the DA. In the meantime, don't contact her, and keep your daughter close." Ethan stood. "Max is still in holding, but if this checks out, I want the bite report revisited." "We'll follow protocol," Rains said. "And if you're right, Max isn't just innocent, he's a hero." That night, Ethan tried to rest, but sleep never came. His mind raced, replaying every moment Sadie had ever spent alone with Lila. He needed closure, but closure came, strangely, unexpectedly. Outside the station, Ethan stood beside his car, staring at his reflection in the glass. Yesterday, his world was oatmeal and Zoom calls. Today, it was chemicals, camera angles, and case files. He wasn't just a father anymore, trying to keep things steady. He was back in his element, a man following the trail with a dog that never missed the truth. The next morning, while Ethan quietly made coffee and tried to ignore how empty the house felt without Max, the doorbell rang. No one was there. Just a white envelope resting neatly on the doormat. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typewritten, no handwriting, no return address. It held only one line. "He wasn't wrong. Check her purse. She was never meant to stay this long." Ethan stared at the message, stunned. Part of him wanted to call the police immediately, but the other part, the one shaped by a father who taught him to trust instinct first, acted. Sadie's purse was still in the house. She'd left in a rush after the incident, her arm bandaged, leaving it tucked under the umbrella stand. Ethan hadn't touched it, not until now. He pulled it into the center of the living room and unzipped it. Inside were the usual items: gum, some grocery receipts, a lipstick, a pen. But deep in the bottom compartment, his fingers brushed something cold, hard, a pill bottle. The label was faded, partly torn, but still legible. Name: Clara Jensen. Prescription: fluoxetine dosage, 1 tablet daily, for anxiety, dispensed by Northside Women's Correctional Facility. Ethan went still. Clara Jensen was not Sadie Monroe. He dug deeper. At the bottom of the bag was an old folded newspaper clipping from a local Illinois paper. It showed a mugshot of a woman with sunken eyes and unkempt hair. The headline read, "Mother sentenced for child neglect, accused of deliberate starvation." The face in the photo was Sadie, or rather Clara, tired, hollow-eyed, but unmistakable. Ethan grabbed his laptop, pulled up the county records database. Within minutes, the file loaded. Clara Jensen, age 35. Convicted for endangering the welfare of a child. Served 18 months. Released early on supervised parole. Current address, unknown. Status, under monitoring. Ethan sank to the floor. The woman who had lived in his house rocked Lila to sleep, took her to the park, held her during fevers, was a convicted abuser. A woman who had once starved her own child. He dialed Detective Jordan Rains without hesitation. "We have a bigger problem," he said, voice cold and low. "What is it?" "Sadie Monroe doesn't exist. Her real name is Clara Jensen. I have her prescription and a news article with her photo. Sending it now." There was a long pause on the other end. "This changes everything," Rains said. "If she used a fake ID to work with a child, that's federal. And with a prior for child abuse, and now a possible poisoning attempt, this case just escalated." Ethan gripped his phone. "Where is she now?" "She said she was staying with a cousin to recover, but it could be a lie. We're issuing a bolo immediately." "And Max?" Ethan asked, eyes drifting down the hallway. "We're reviewing his file. With this new evidence, we can push to lift the quarantine early." Ethan didn't reply. He looked toward his daughter's room and realized Max had seen the truth long before he did. 2 days after Clara Jensen's true identity came to light, Ethan found himself standing in a quiet corner of town, outside a modest little building tucked between a hair salon and a pet supply store. A wooden sign above the door read, "Kindred Spirit, Animal Behavior and Rehabilitation Center." Max lay on a thick foam mat inside, eyes alert but not anxious. A sleepy tabby cat napped near his flank. Ethan watched through a one-way observation window, heart tightening as he saw Max still scanning the room. Watchful, calm, composed. A woman entered the viewing area. "You must be Ethan Cole." "I am. I'm Melanie Grant, behaviorist. 20 years in the field, used to work with military K-9s at Fort Benning. Now I specialize in the ones people don't quite understand." She extended her hand, firm and honest. Ethan managed a smile, for the first time in days. In a small consultation room, Melanie opened Max's file. Max responds to verbal commands cleanly. No prey drive, no signs of neurological distress, no aggression toward unfamiliar handlers, even under stress. In short, there's no indication this is a dangerous dog. Ethan leaned forward. "Then what was the bite?" Melanie tapped a section of the chart. "It was a protective response, not aggressive. No follow-up bite, no shaking, no tearing. He held. That's control, not fear. That's training. That's loyalty." Ethan dropped his face into his hands and exhaled. "I needed to hear that." "And I'll testify if needed," she said. "Max isn't unstable. If anything, he's one of the most reliable dogs I've assessed." Ethan turned to the window again. Max was now lying beside a small stuffed bear. Lila's old backpack toy. Somehow Max had sniffed it out and curled beside it like he was still on watch. "He's never been dangerous," Ethan said softly. "He's the last thing my father left me. And now, he's my daughter's protector too." 2 days after Melanie's official report, Ethan got a call from Detective Jordan Rains at 10 a.m. "Good news," she said. "With the new evidence and the behaviorist's testimony, the board has decided to lift Max's quarantine order. You can pick him up anytime." Ethan didn't respond, just grabbed his keys and ran out the door. The drive to the Animal Control Center took 20 minutes. It felt like forever. When he arrived, Max was already standing inside his kennel, tail wagging so hard his entire body shook. His paws scratched at the floor, ears perked, eyes bright, like he'd sensed Ethan long before he walked through the door. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said softly as the tech unlocked the gate. Max bolted into his arms, pressing his nose to Ethan's palm, licking frantically, making soft, excited grumbles that sounded more like joy than growling. "Yeah, I missed you too," Ethan murmured. "Let's go home. We've got work to do." On the ride back, Max sat still but buzzed with energy, his nose out the window, eyes scanning for home, like he'd memorized every tree and turn. The second Ethan opened the front door, Max tore inside, sprinting down the hallway, then veered into Lila's room. She was sleeping lightly, cheeks flushed with a low-grade fever. Max stopped at her bedside, nuzzled her forehead, then lay down beside the bed, head resting between his front paws, eyes never leaving her. Ethan stood in the doorway, silent. There were no words needed. Max knew exactly who mattered most. That night, Ethan opened his laptop, staring at the folder labeled M case. Inside, images, reports, prescription scans, camera screenshots. He called Marcus Lee, the best digital investigator he knew. "I need to track someone who's good at hiding," Ethan said. "Real name's Clara Jensen. Might be using something new." "Send me everything," Marcus replied. "Quietly, I'll find her." 3 hours later, a GPS map appeared on Ethan's screen. Dots marked a small motel, gas station, and roadside diner, clustered around a forest town just 40 miles east. Clara hadn't gone far. That same evening, Lila spiked a mild fever. Ethan held her close and called Dr. Clark. "Could be delayed chemical exposure," Clark said, "especially if she ingested more than once. Keep her hydrated, monitor her closely." Ethan gently wiped her forehead, guilt like a stone in his chest. He'd almost missed it, almost lost her. Max stood silently at the hallway entrance, eyes fixed on Lila. Since returning home, he hadn't left her side, not for a second. He didn't eat unless she did. He didn't sleep unless she did. Ethan knew Max was still on alert. Outside, the wind picked up, sweeping through the grass with a whisper that felt too sharp to ignore. Ethan rose, holding Lila close, and looked at Max. "You sense something we don't you?" Max didn't bark. He didn't move. He just watched and growled. A low, deliberate growl, not from fear, but warning. Danger wasn't gone. It was closer than they thought. Around 1 a.m., the house was so quiet that Ethan could hear the soft rhythm of Lila breathing in her room. He was still on the couch, reading through Clara Jensen's file. Then Max lifted his head. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply sat up, ears forward, eyes locked toward the kitchen window, like something invisible had stirred. Ethan put the file down. "You sense something again, don't you?" Max didn't look back. He walked slowly to the window, posture alert, gaze unwavering on the backyard. Ethan followed. He flicked on the porch light. Nothing out there. But Max didn't move, leaning just slightly forward, calculating. Ethan decided to trust the one instinct that had never failed him. He opened his security app, zoomed the backyard camera feed in on the tool shed. There, a faint shape moving near the fence. Clara. Ethan grabbed his phone and sent a quick message to Detective Raines. "She's in my backyard, alone, near the shed." Then he looked at Max. "What now, buddy?" Max turned his head slowly. Then he left the window and walked straight into Lila's room, sitting by her door, calm, still, guarding. It was clear. "I'll protect her. You handle the rest." Ethan stepped out the side door with a flashlight, careful, silent. Outside, Clara was crouched by the shed, rummaging through her bag. She held a small plastic bottle in a folded paper packet. "Stop right there," Ethan called. Clara froze and spun around. Her face was pale, eyes wild. "I just wanted to talk," she said quickly, still gripping her things. "Police are on their way," Ethan replied. "You shouldn't be here." "She was mine too," Clara whispered, eyes wild. "I fixed everything. I did what her own mother never did. I just wanted to say goodbye before you poisoned her against me." "You poisoned her breakfast," Ethan said, voice gravel. "You lied. You lived in my house. And now you're back, hiding something in your hands. You expect me to believe you again?" Police sirens wailed in the distance. Clara's hands trembled. She dropped the bottle into the grass. Detective Raines arrived moments later. "Clara Jensen, hands up, don't speak." She complied. An officer cuffed her without resistance. Clara looked back at Ethan, eyes damp, not from guilt, but because she'd lost. When Ethan returned inside, Max was still by Lila's room, posture relaxed now, eyes soft. As Ethan stepped closer, Max rose, patted to him, and gently nudged his hand. Ethan crouched down. "You didn't need to chase her. You trusted me to handle it," he whispered. "You're smarter than I give you credit for." Max simply licked his hand, tail swaying gently. Not for praise, just to say, this was always his job. The next morning, Ethan sat in silence in his study. On the desk lay a soft, worn-out notebook, something the police had handed back to him at dawn. Clara Jensen had carried it in her purse the night she was arrested. According to Detective Raines, inside were private, disturbed journal entries, fragments of a mind that had unraveled long before she came into their lives. Ethan didn't want to read it, but he had to understand. The cover read faintly in smudged ink, C. Jensen, Notes. He turned the first page. In a slanted script, it read, "This time I'll do it right. This child is clean. This child is good." Ethan's chest tightened. The second page was written more carefully. "She's starting to trust me. No more crying when I hold her. I tell bedtime stories and give her milk on time. I do better than her mother. I can see that." Some lines have been crossed out angrily. Ethan always leaves at 8:15. Later entries shifted into something darker. The handwriting grew larger, bolder, urgent. The dog, Max. He watches. He doesn't blink. He knows I'm not the bad one. One of the final pages had a messy drawing. A little girl in a crib next to a large dog with its eyes crossed out. Underneath, scrawled in shaky letters, "They never saw what I did for her." Ethan felt a chill spread through his spine. The last page looked rushed, as if written during a panic. "I did it right this time. Lila didn't go hungry. I gave her what I never got. Attention. No one understands. But I made it right this time." Ethan closed the notebook and set it aside like something toxic. Clara Jensen wasn't just a liar, not just a poisoner. She was a woman reliving her own trauma, believing she was saving a child by rewriting her past. And Lila, his pure, joyful daughter, had nearly become collateral for that madness. Max stepped silently into the room. No sound, no praise needed. He simply stood there, a reminder. "I saw what you didn't, and I'm still here, watching." 3 days after Clara Jensen's arrest, Ethan received a call from the district attorney's office. The voice on the other end was calm and firm. She pled guilty, all charges, no trial. Ethan sat in silence for a moment. "What were the final charges?" he asked. "Intentional poisoning of a minor? Identity fraud? Endangerment of a child? Violation of parole terms?" "She's being sentenced to 25 years in prison. No parole eligibility for at least 15. Ethan exhaled, long and slow. He wasn't a vengeful man, but justice mattered. For Lila, for Max, and for every other parent who could have fallen for the same lie. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Actually," the DA replied, "we should be thanking your partner. Cases don't often get solved thanks to the instincts of a dog." Ethan glanced at Max, curled up by the window, sunlight on his coat, eyes half closed, ears still alert. He smiled. "He's not just a dog," Ethan said. "He's the reason my daughter is still alive." 2 days later, the town hosted a small thank you gathering at the Central Park. No big cameras, no podiums, just neighbors, families, and kids Max had licked on their way home from school. The mayor stepped forward, holding a small medal engraved with a name. "For bravery, protective instinct, and saving a child's life, we honor Max, honorary partner of Pine Valley." The crowd applauded. Lila squealed, "Max is a superhero!" Max didn't bark, but his tail wagged hard and his eyes gleamed. Ethan knelt beside his four-legged friend and clipped the medal around Max's neck. "You earned this," he whispered, "and so much more." As the sun began to set, Lila rode on Ethan's shoulders, her tiny hand gripping Max's medal, while Max walked beside them, silent, loyal, always near. And Ethan knew that, finally, everything was right again. 2 weeks after the sentencing, the house on Sycamore Street finally began to breathe again. Morning light poured through the kitchen windows. The scent of banana muffins drifted warm in the air, and Lila hummed to herself at the table, her feet swinging under the high chair. Ethan sat across from her, hands wrapped around a cup of hot coffee, something rare in recent months. He wasn't sipping on the go anymore. He was sitting, breathing, present. Across the kitchen, Max lay with his head resting on his paws, his eyes locked on Lila's bowl like a silent sentinel. Even after everything had passed, Max didn't let his guard down. Whenever Lila raised her spoon, Max lifted his head. If Ethan stepped away for even a moment, Max would inch closer, never blinking, always watching her food. No growling, no tension, just quiet vigilance from a protector who hadn't forgotten. Ethan noticed it one morning when he took a call and stepped briefly into the hallway. When he returned, Max was seated right beside Lila's chair, eyes fixed on the bowl of oatmeal. Only when Lila had eaten every bite did Max retreat and lie back down. Life was rebuilding itself. Ethan scaled back work, declined long projects, and spent afternoons at the park, walking with Lila and Max beneath canopies of summer green. He installed another camera in the kitchen, not from fear, but because blind trust would never be his choice again. One breezy afternoon, Lila ran ahead, leash in hand, humming her own little tune. Max walked beside her, his gaze tracking each step like he could read her rhythm before she even moved. Ethan paused, smiling softly at the two figures before him. He understood then, trust doesn't come from promises. It's rebuilt in the little things, through Max, through guarded breakfasts, and through eyes that never look away. As Ethan tucked Lila into bed that night, Max curled up beside her crib like he always had, watchful, calm, content. Peace wasn't a fantasy. It had four paws, a soft breath, and eyes that never looked away.